All right, so you saw the little recording thing in front of you. We record these every month so that people can have playbacks. So let me thank you so much. So welcome from the Ozarks. It's a beautiful summer day here. I know that you're in the middle of summer. Do you realize that you're just a little bit over 5 months away from Christmas, the best time of the year? And so, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I got so much stuff I'm going to have to buy and spend money. So I get it. So 5 months, it's hard to believe how fast the year goes by. All right, so this morning we are going to be talking about reviving ailing projects, strategies to breathe life into struggling projects. So if you get this and you're on the normal webinar period with me, then you already have picked up that I try to bounce around to different topics that will be of interest to us. Let me begin by sharing a resource for you, or I'll forget it as I start talking. So those of you who struggle sometimes with some of the projects and you're wanting more than what we're going to be talking about, let me show you the book. This is called Project Recovery. It is put out by Wiley Publishers, and this is Harold Kersner. And so if you're not familiar with Harold Kersner, Kersner is he's a big time consultant in project management. Probably there are more master's and doctoral level programs use his material than almost anything else, but he came out with this book on project recovery. It is excellent. And so if you're looking for something else to go a little bit deeper than what we talk about today, this is a good resource for you. So Project Recovery, Wiley is the publisher and Harold Kersner is the author. So I try to give you resources that will help you go beyond what we're talking about. All right, so today we're going to be talking about reviving ailing projects. And as you already know, those of you who've been in project management for a long time, as you already know, you know that from time to time what happens is we want to think that every project is going to be perfect. And when we start off, we've got high hopes that everything's going to go well. And a lot of different things, a lot of different dynamics happen to your project. Sometimes you lose a lot of your resources to a project maybe of higher priority. And sometimes just the project that you're working on just has hiccups. I mean, and it causes you to start struggling in so many different areas. So there are no guarantees, as we know, in project management. Every project has the potential for success. Every project has potential for failure. And that's what we're trying to do is bail water, get our project back on track. Now, as we talk about this, not 100% of this will fit for every project. So you're going to be customizing some of this. I'm trying to give you a little bit of a broad view as we talk about how to revive your project. So let's start off with how bad is it? And so you see different type of statistics that come out, but I thought these were some good ones. Lack of planning, about 39% of the projects seem to fail due to an inadequate planning. So those of us who have worked on traditional projects, we know that that is the anchor for everything in a traditional project is the ability to plan. And so what happens is that if we haven't planned very well, then obviously you're going to have those hiccups because you're going to have surprises all the way through it, which drive us all nuts. Decision-making speed. Projects where leadership can make decisions within an hour show a 58% higher success rate. Now, the reason I like this is because in classes, when we're talking with folks, we all have gotten bogged down in decisions. And you're not talking bad people. You're just talking about, the bureaucracy and the process that we all get into from time to time and trying to get the right people in the right room to make the right decision. But 58% higher success rate if we can make the decisions within an hour or so, which means accessibility is really what that's focusing on. So that's one of the pieces I thought that was really an interesting statistic that we don't normally hear much about, even though we all have experienced something like this. Performance of businesses. Poorly performing businesses face the biggest challenges with projects. 36% will achieve success. And these were from project management statistics in January of 2024, just a few months ago. And I thought that was an important piece here because you've got so many businesses who almost everybody runs projects. And so when you start looking at if they are at what's going on here, the challenges are just enormous. And that's the reason why project managers and project teams have to have so much more authority to make some decisions is to be able to plug some of these holes. And then project size and the success rate. I thought this was really interesting. Projects under $1 million have a 76% success rate compared to projects over $10 million, which have a 10% success rate. Oh my goodness. And so some of you guys I know are working on these big boys, and so you're thinking, "Oh my gosh!" So I thought that was an interesting statistic that we hate to see. 10%. Of course, there's so many hidden things, as you know, in these monster-sized projects. So my point in showing you these was there are some things that are struggling with project management. Even when we do our best, sometimes there's going to be those hiccups. So is the project really in trouble? Let's start here. What's amazing sometimes is sometimes people have a wrong idea of what's happening with the project. I'm not talking about project manager. Project manager and team normally have a pretty decent idea, but when you start talking to management or the PMO or the sponsor, it's really kind of a dissecting here of how bad is the project? Is the project really in trouble? And so not all projects that appear to be in trouble are really that much in trouble. For an example, just because someone thinks that we've missed a due date, that the project is absolutely, in terrible trouble, is not necessarily true, as you know. Some due dates are different than other due dates. Obviously, if it's a due date on a critical path, that's going to be a bigger deal. But you're looking to see, is this something that we're going to be able to recoup? Is this something we're going to be able to speed up in another area? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Verifying the project has trouble does not mean that just running behind on a schedule or a budget is automatically saying, okay, well, it's doomed. Well, it's not. We know that because we have put in contingency time there. And even on the Agile side or Scrum side, many times our estimates, we still have worked in a little bit of contingency time to be able to fix something that goes wrong. So trouble projects have already tried damage control, possibly working extra time or planning for basic recovery, and understanding the level of tolerance will help interpret whether a project is in trouble. And that's where your team comes in. I'm sorry, hold on a second. I have been battling allergies, and my poor folks at FAA out in Alabama, I guess it was, they have had to deal with that all week long while we were doing training for them. And so I apologize. I thought I was going to get through an hour with you without this. So so I don't normally speak with something in my mouth, but if I don't, we will cough 45 of these 60 minutes. All right, so let's talk about some symptoms. The project is really in trouble. No one of these is all that you need. It's really the combination of these that really need to cause us some concern. So you're missing on deadlines, you're missing deadlines or there's no deadlines. Now, I know that's hard to believe for some people, but there are some situations where organizations don't have deadlines. Project teams don't have a lot of deadlines. They maybe have an end date, but all the different deliverables they don't really nail down. Unclear or lack of project requirements. If you're on the traditional side, you know this is a heartache because those project requirements are something that's going to drive everything because it's driving the deliverables and it's driving the amount of work. A fast-paced changing of the requirements, problems are discovered but are never reported. Interpersonal problems within the team, those are terrible because you sometimes are putting out more fires for conflict than working on the project. Extensive quality problems and issues, limited feedback desired by management, customer, or sponsor. So you contact them because you're wanting feedback from the stakeholders, and they don't call you back, or they don't send you an email, or they don't allow you to have a meeting. Also, project completion continues to be reported at the same percentage for several meetings. That should be a red flag to us normally. Your project should be moving forward. Might not be perfect, but it should be moving forward. And then consistently more time and money than expected. That means that we didn't have a good estimate or a good understanding, or we didn't have a good understanding of the scope requirements. So we've got a lot of different things we're having to put in to structure this thing up as we go through. So it's more the amount of symptoms that we're looking at rather than just one. All of us have had some of these on almost every project. That just seems to happen, okay? So the other piece of this would be all projects experience some symptoms. Healthy projects experience hurdles like this, and through team ideas, PM leadership, and management support, each can be overcome. Because once again, you're reporting to the team, you're brainstorming with your team, you're coming up with a solution. Troubled projects, though, are something a little bit different. When you have that real troubled project, and I know many of you have that experience in these, you constantly are kind of going from a failure situation to another failure situation. And so the thing is that there's stuff that you're not even detecting possibly because you're putting out fires from all of these failure situations. Normal project planning and team intervention will not get a failing project healthy. And so that's the reason why when we talk about this is not something you're going to handle in most of your team meetings. You will probably create a recovery team, or at least part of your team will be in that recovery mode, trying to focus on what is going wrong with the project. So this is more than just standard meetings that we're going through. Experience ambiguity and unclear goals. Now, we've already referred to that as one of the symptoms. This is a terrible thing, and no organization, no project team should actually accept this. Ambiguity is hard for us to do anything because I don't know what you mean, and I need to ask questions. And if the answer is don't let me know what you mean or what you're wanting, then we've got concerns, we've got trouble. So defining that scope, and you say, well, we run Agile, and I get it, but Agile still has scope. Your customer is still talking to that product owner who is still creating that product backlog, and that's going to have your scope of work there. Even though it's prioritized, it's going to have your scope of work. And even though there's changes on the Agile side, you still need to be understanding what's going to be the output of every sprint you do as you run through this. And so the idea of SMART goals, which all of us have talked about before in other programs, are very important. So is it measurable? And that's what we have to be thinking about. How can I measure what the customer wants or what the requirement says? And then agile projects will create a DOD, that's a definition of done. Those of you from Department of Defense, that's not you. And so it's a definition of done. And minimum viable product is MVP or a product backlog. And that's what your scope is. That's what you're looking at. That's what you're going to be delivering for that customer. Poor project planning and execution. Plan-driven projects must thoroughly plan each section of the project. So that's going to be a traditional project. Agile projects plan the sprint and the outcomes to later be applied. So you've got two different focus, but both have to understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish. Execution in Agile includes strong communication, flexibility, faster delivery for any recovery effort. And the reason why Agile has faster recovery is because you're already structured to be flexible. You're already structured for changes. Where in traditional, that's that command and control mindset. So when we made our plan in the beginning, we have command and control, and we baseline that plan to control it all the way to the end. So now that we're having to do extra stuff and extra steps, that means that that plan's not working. And so that's the reason why it's a little bit more of a struggle there. And that's why so many times you'll have a recovery plan that will fit in the middle of your project plan in order to get it back on track sometimes. The other piece would be enhancing communication and collaboration. We need to be able to talk to each other. We need to be able to communicate because things are having problems. Establish effective communication channels, ensure open lines of communication within the project team, with the stakeholders, fosters transparency, collaboration, and that's a huge piece to be able to talk about it without the fear of being judged, without the fear of retaliation. And so to encourage those regular team meetings and feedback sessions on how we can get the project back on track. So that's different than we're trying to finish the project. We're trying to make up those 2 weeks we're behind. We're trying to make up the timing that has killed our project plan to where we can't actually finish the project. So what do we have to do that? Then you're looking at empowering the team. Those of you who work on the teams where they are more empowered seem to have more flexibility on recovery. Now, that's a very broad statement, I know, but it does seem like your team members are then able to make that adjustment on their own, and it's going to be faster because they're calling the shot on some of this. Before empowering the project team, there has to be some guidelines, obviously. So you can provide training and build up the team skills. We're going to talk about some of these: root cause analysis, decision making, facilitation, conflict management, shifting the culture. And so if it's really a command and control culture in your organization, then you're going to find project managers and project sponsors and maybe PMOs who don't like the idea that teams are making some of the decisions. However, you have a temporary goal that you have to think about. What do we have to do to get the project back on track? And if we're trying to do something to get the project back on track, we have to do it a little bit differently. And that means decisions have to be made faster. So if I don't want my team making decisions and I'm the PMO director, I might need to be setting in the team meetings with them to say yes or no so that they have access to that authority instantly. You got to speed those decisions up. Conducting the project reviews. We have to evaluate what is really happening on our project. Is this a people problem? Is it a performance problem? Is it a requirements problem? Is it an estimation problem? So performance requires evaluating the project with true metrics and clear assignments for recovery. We've all worked on those situations where we weren't real happy with the estimates. We felt like maybe the estimates were thrown over the wall. So bad project reviews would be a warning of the project and maybe even an illness, meaning that could be part of our culture here, that people are not estimating things correctly. And so you're using that review as a trigger to look at what are the gaps, what are the problems we're having. you're conducting a lessons learned and looking at some of those to monitor some of those gaps. However, something like 75% of many companies never touch a lessons learned, and if they do, they never go back to a lessons learned to be able to help them with other information. So it's possible that those gaps are being spoken of, but nobody's carrying them over to be able to help evolve your processes and your way of doing things to where it's going to be much better. So a couple of things. So root cause analysis. Many of you are doing this all the time in your projects. You're spot on. But that root cause analysis that we're talking about here is based on why we're missing due dates and why we're not being able to hit the deliverables. You're looking to see what is the problem. Is it a people problem? Is it a process problem? What's going on here? So it's critical to dig deeper to see what the problem is. We have a tendency because of speed and pressure to slap a Band-Aid on this. And that's what you're not wanting to do. And I'm not saying you, when I say you, I'm just saying in our culture, so many times we do that. By conducting a thorough analysis of the root cause, we then look at what is the real problem here and not just putting another Band-Aid on it and moving on. The way you can tell that you've been putting a Band-Aid on it is, are these crises and gaps happening over and over and over again? You think you got it fixed, and then another 6 months or another 3 months, here it goes again. You think you got that fixed, and here it goes again. Then that means that something that we're not really getting to the root. We're just treating the leaves on the tree, and we really need to be digging in a little bit deeper. All right, so a visual of the recovery plan would look something like this. So you've got your project schedule in progress, causes of the problem that you're looking at, recovery assessment and plan, because you're looking at that problem and which is messing up your schedule and messing up your budget probably. And so what you're going to find is that then you're coming up with a plan to be able to re-engage the project and hopefully make up as much of that time as possible. And so then what happens is that you've got that miniature plan, and then you over the top of your original plan. And a lot of times that original plan might even be put on hold because now you're running a recovery plan. And so now your recovery team leaves, and now you're able to then go back to your original plan. So here's how this works. So if you've ever worked on a crisis situation on a project, you know what I'm talking about. A crisis happens on your project, you throw a lot of manpower at this, and so what happens is a lot of people are working on that project to get it all fixed, and then all of a sudden you start seeing after it gets everything ready, everybody starts filtering back to other projects and other duties, okay? And then your project a lot of times will start running the project based on the original plan to finish it out. Very similar. But what you're doing here is that you're purposely putting in that recovery plan. You're purposely being able to have authority to bring those resources in. And so a lot of times when we look at trying to recover a project, and once again, it has to be the higher priority projects, or you're not going to have approval for that. So implementing a recovery plan. So let's say we make a recommendation and we do need a recovery plan. In other words, let's say it's 2 or 3 weeks that we've got to have extra resources to pull this thing together. So a lot of this is going to come from the team, project manager, making recommendations to management. They're not working on the project every day. And so you're making recommendations to them on what needs to happen and why it needs to happen. So you're pleading the case. So you're communicating a lot of different things. And part of it is going to be the gap of here's where we are, here's where we need to be. And so that's going to be very important for you to be able to do that. You're going to try to engage the stakeholders and manage expectations. And so creating a list of the main stakeholders who have the authority, the expertise to correct a failing or ailing project is going to be important. So here you're not talking in generalities. I need Betty because Betty is the top programmer, and this is a programming issue that we've run across. And so we need her expertise in this. So you are purposely asking for key resources or subject matter experts. And you're establishing some other type of meetings. These are not weekly meetings like you would have for status in a normal project or something like that, or 15-minute daily stand-ups. You purposely are setting up recovery effort type meetings to where you're going to talk about that recovery effort. You're going to communicate the progress. You're going to communicate achievements to where folks understand we've got this fixed and now we're getting ready to work on this. And so that communication keeps your team focused and moving forward. You're going to discuss any new challenges that have surfaced. That remedy did not fix it. that we thought it would, but it did not. So now we've got to come together to look at, okay, what's our another plan to fix this? And then what is the realistic timeline for being able to work on these? This is normally your high priority projects, and so you're throwing resources and people at it. Your timelines obviously are going to fluctuate because as you throw more people at this, once again, some of your people have expertise in certain areas, but you normally have a lot of expertise and subject matter experts working on these type of projects for recovery. And then conducting a post recovery evaluation. So after you get all of this worked out, this is part of celebrating success. So you identify successful strategies, and this is going to help your team even grow even more. They have been part of a recovery effort that has been successful. So the next recovery effort, they're going to be able to take that experience and take it with them. And so your lessons learned if are retrospectives, depending on which type of methodology you're using or framework for projects, is going to be very important because people are going to learn from those lessons learned. People are going to learn from that retrospective. And so this is where the documentation is super important. And so what do we do? How do we respond and what do we do with a recovery project? So it's going to be totally different mindset than what we're talking about with a traditional project or an agile. Now let's talk specifically about the diagnosis. Usually we're so fast to try to put out the fires that we don't diagnose. We just start try to do anything we can to stop the bleeding. And I get it, I understand that, but diagnosing and making sure we're doing the right thing. So here's a little breakdown of this. And so look at the themes, list the themes from the research as you start researching why this project is failing. Prioritize the problems. As you prioritize the problems, you and your team are determining this is the bigger problem. If we can fix this, then it's going to take care of all of these ripple effects that we're dealing with. Create a quick hit list. Which of some of these that we can put the fire out fast and have some momentum with this thing? If that works for your situation, that's going to be perfect. And then check the status of major project areas. And I just gave you a list of some. This is not all of them. But I even went all the way through. In other words, business case all the way down to team performance, because you're looking to see did this project as it went haywire, what is it killing here? Does it mean that our business case is we're not gonna meet the return on investment for the business case? Is it gonna do something with the charter? Did our statement of work now evolve to something totally different? Is that part of it? So you're looking at a lot of your major documents to come back and say, okay, here's some of the things that have cracked what we've been trying to do and caused it to go haywire. Then you're creating a recovery plan. Recovery plan is not your new project plan. It's only for the recovery effort. So if you're doing a 6-week recovery, it's 6-week plan is what you're working on to get the project back on track. And then you can adjust and create any missing plans that maybe people, because they didn't plan in the first place, are now needing to be planned for that project. And then select team members. You might have a recovery team that's different than your project team. And rightly so, that's not a problem. And they might float on and take over those 6 weeks and then prepare for the recovery launch. We want to launch this thing and start putting out fires and making some progress. The thing that we see that's happening with recovery of projects right now that's such a challenge, it really comes back down to that people are struggling because we have a skeleton crew and we're working on so many projects at the same time that you really don't have additional people to come in to switch over to do a recovery effort right now. And that's one of the most common things that we see. That might be a situation you're experiencing as well. So diagnosis comes from analysis. And so understanding the problem, so you're putting a lot of things in. Obviously, you had warning signs, you started picking up on that, no doubt about it. But in addition to that, you started looking at document analysis. You start going through all the documents of what the project is, how the project has been responding, how the project has been performing, okay? Then you're looking at management interviews. What is management seeing? They're starting to see that there's some problems with this project as well, which is good because you're going to need their authority in some of these decision making. And then team interviews. Your team a lot of times has picked up on some cues. If it's a good environment where your team feels like they can approach management and can approach the project manager or the product owner or the customer or whoever, they probably have already been talking about some of these things. But it's not that way. Some teams have seen things, but they don't feel like they can share anything. So they have seen some things in their and themselves, and so interviewing them to see what is it that they have seen, and pick their brain a little bit to where you can kind of go back to when did this start happening. A lot of times, when it started happening is not when your project started falling apart. You don't discover it for weeks or months down the road here, and we actually heard it. It actually started hurting the project earlier. All right, so let's talk about failure. We're not just talking about being off schedule. We're not just talking about cost, even though obviously those are the things that are a big deal. So we're going to talk about the different types of failure that you might find yourself putting together a recovery team. So failure in a project can include full project failure or just small aspects of failure. So in other words, just a section. So maybe your project is doing pretty good, but your quality stinks. And all the quality that's coming out. You got software with bugs in it. You're making products that are not fulfilling what the organization wants or what the customer is going to want. Projects do not need to fail 100% of the requirements, but they're failing something that's significant with that project. Could be functionality, it could be value. All of those would still be considered a failure. The customer expectations can rank a project as a failure, even though the requirements and functionality are successful. So sometimes what the customer expected is going to be different a little bit than what we even delivered. So success in a project can range that way as well. So some projects achieve total success by achieving everything the customer desired from the business case that was outlined. And then a project could be only partially successful by achieving some of the outcomes and value, but not the level outlined. And so there's a range of success, just like there's a range of recovery. And so that might not fit for your organization or for your culture. I get it, but there can be and is a range in these. So let's talk about some recovery. Let's talk about some levels first off. First one would be mild or low intervention. I look on the screen and I'm seeing a ton of people on here with me, and most of you I've trained face to face with, or we have trained as you got your PMP. Many of you deal with this first level easily. You deal with it on a constant day-to-day basis. Mild or low intervention. You're always looking at that. Project has some problems, but the recovery effort will finish within maybe a few weeks. You kind of build it into your current plan, and with limited resources, you put everybody in there and you kind of work it out and plug the holes and get it all caught back up the way you want, and then you move on and start using your plan, or you're running it by sprints the way you've always run it. Most of us do this kind of ad hoc on the side with every one of our projects. It's from immediate and strong intervention that sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge. So immediate intervention, the project experiences problems but it's impacting it for several weeks or even months. That's usually where you're starting to bring people in. Management is taking a higher look at it. If management's showing up at your meetings, it's probably not a good thing. And so what happens is if you're going through those meetings, that's going to be probably at this level. And then you got strong intervention. The project's not responding to recovery efforts, and that's another challenge. We put a recovery plan in, but the recovery plan isn't turning things around. And so now we're talking about, okay, did we might make the right decisions on what we were going to recover, how we were going to do the recovery. And so many of the cultural issues which force the project maybe into recovery needs to be changed or modified. So I want to say this one more time. If you have the recovery plan in place and you're trying to get the project turned around and it's still struggling, back up and look at the culture. Is there a cultural thing that's preventing some of this to happen? So, like for an example, we have a great recovery plan, but I'm still having to run everything through management, and it's taken 2 days for management to always make a decision. That's a cultural thing. So there needs to be that discussion where we have access to somebody who can make decisions faster than that. And management will see that over time too, but that has to actually be a discussion. Emotions and recovery. It's a very emotional thing when you have a recovery effort on your project. You feel like a failure. Your project team feels like a failure. If you're the project manager, you might feel like a failure too, especially your first one. But the point is that these emotions are really real in this situation. Emotions can have a large span depending on the person, the role they play, but we can feel like a failure. And yet everything we did was spot on. But the way the project got set up, the way the project got estimated, the way people were assigned to my project, we could have had crack after crack after crack before we ever started the project. So there might be some other outlying reasons. You don't normally just have a screw up that just happens. You normally have other decisions that were made, not intentionally, but they were made that hurt our project. Recovery managers must attack the problem with the project and encourage and support the team. This is not a screaming and cussing kind of thing. This is a thing where you're wanting your people to be the experts that you've hired and allow them to give input on this. You're wanting them to think outside the box for trying to get the project back on. And you've got wonderful people who can do that on your team. All right, some common emotions. Let's talk about a few of these. Fear. Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. And a lot of times people do think this. And a lot of times, sometimes people might lose their job. I've seen some pretty bad screw ups where people never fired the project manager. I've seen some pretty bad things happen. That's okay. So project crisis brings a great deal of fear to everybody. Nobody wants their project to fail. And I just don't believe that most people get up in the morning and think, well, let's just see how we can screw this project up. I mean, none of us think that, even though you might be living it thinking, oh my gosh, I need more medication. I mean, we go through all of that. But fear is not verbalized a lot of times, and it can be a strong resistance because stakeholders are looking at each recovery effort to how it's going to make them look to management or to others. And that's where the fear comes in is, oh, I'm going to look bad to management. I'm going to look bad to administration. And so, of course, we want our project to go great. Second one is confusion. This is probably the most common. If you've worked on a recovery effort, you know what I'm saying. We don't know all the ins and outs of why this project is struggling. That's why you're needing to do the analysis. But we do. Stakeholders experience confusion during crisis because we don't know why, and we're hoping what we're putting into place is going to fix it. And that's why if we're doing it without the analysis, then you might just create a new problem, but it's just as equal a problem as what you're trying to solve. So these actions worked on other projects, but not on this one. And we see that a lot of times. It fixed something similar to this, but not this one. And so what can I be doing? And that is wrong. And a lot of times we're asking ourselves this. We're perplexed with this. So we do have confusion. The one we want to move away from on this is blame. Blame does not speed your project up. And we all have seen people decide they're going to blame somebody for something. I mean, we seem to be a blaming society for everything. We got to find somebody who's accountable. All of that can be dealt with later. You're trying to get the project back on track as fast as possible. So everyone wants to be free of blame. Well, it's not me. I didn't do it. It's them. And they're saying it's not us. It's them. It's not us. It's the vendor. And so all of that can be dealt with later. Right now, the project is still in crisis. So you focus on fixing the problem and be nice, be kind to people. It's pressure and you're concerned about it, obviously. If it is found that the main reason for the project crisis is because of lack of skills of a person, that can be handled by training and not blaming them, but training them. They misestimated the project. They did not communicate. All of those could be training pieces to where you still have a great team, but maybe it's a skill situation. You want to rule that out. Excitement. Team members who are excited, the recovery efforts are engaged, and stakeholders will finally receive the outcomes and the project desired. The recovery manager needs to create an atmosphere which supports excitement so the team's motivated and positive. You're dealing with a recovery effort with a can do attitude. We can fix this. And you've got smart people working with you. We can fix it. We can turn this around. We can plug these holes. That's what you're wanting desperately to be able to paint that picture. It can't be a picture where it's a gripe session every time you meet. It's a put down session every time you meet. You've got to share true information. They've got to share true information, but it's got to be that where we're in this thing together, and they've got to feel that we're all in this thing together. Skepticism, very common. Well, it's that mindset. I don't know if this is going to work, and I get it. Sometimes we don't know. So projects fail not because of a lack of effort, from most team members. These individuals tried numerous approaches to turn the project around prior to recognizing the crisis. So this is the reason why many times they will separate the project team from the recovery team. This team did not just allow this to happen and not do something. They were taking steps all the way up until the crisis, okay? So at this point, it might make sense, might not make sense to move the team off temporarily and let a recovery team work on it that's got fresh eyes, fresh authority, and to be able to fix it, and then move your team back in. In some situations, that wouldn't work at all because that team working on it in the beginning is the only expertise you have. But skepticism can be there. It's reinforced with team thinking that they are smart, experienced, and understand their culture. And so the thing is that we can be very skeptical about solutions, but this is not going to help us to fight about the solution as much as it is to be on the same side and try some of these things and see what the impact is going to be. Hope is another emotion. Management and customer has hope that the recovery efforts will salvage the project. They're unsure of the steps of action, what it will take, but they have hope everyone will finish it. This has to be your foundation. You believe in your people. You have not hired bad people. You're not working for a bad customer. Most people, if they're trying to finish this as well. And so you want them to think as clearly as possible, hope that we're going to fix this. It's not fixed yet, but we're working on it. It's not running right yet, but we're working on it. We think it will be that. For an example, this morning, if you were on the news, you probably heard the news that a lot of your airlines are having trouble and shutting and having to delay flights because one of the big security contractors that everybody uses, cybersecurity contractors, they actually sent out an update and something was wrong. Now I got news for you. They have people all over the world working on this puppy this morning. And that's exactly what they're trying to do is get that recovered so that because it's hitting airlines, it's hitting all kinds of transportation pieces, hospitals, anybody who had contracts with that security company. It wasn't a terrorist thing, it was a mistake in an update. So everybody's trying to get it recovered. And so that was lead news this morning if you didn't see it. I'm an old guy. I watch news in the morning. I apologize. So you got it on your phone. Look on your phone. It's really pretty bad. All right, so here's the different types of failure. We're going to do a fast pace run through on some of these. And so these are different types of failure. And so it's not just I'm behind on schedule and money, even though that's going to ultimately be there on some of these. So let's take these one at a time very quickly, okay? Let's start with the business case. So if you're running a traditional project, the business case is one of your main documents that you're going to be using. And so the business case includes the levels of return on investment, the value this project brings. So the scope of the project is written in hard to quantify language. And we see that on some projects. Some projects just, it's not like we're rolling out a new iPhone and we're going to make $150 million the first 3 months once it goes out on the market, okay? So we do work on projects that the value is hard to quantify. Those of you who work for nonprofits, you know how hard it is. You're trying to roll out a program that's going to benefit a certain population of people. And so it might not be a dollar amount for an ROI here, but you're looking at value. What value does this do? So any type of general information in the business case, any type of general goal, any kind of general performance that's there is really sometimes difficult to measure because you have to think through and back into it. How can we measure that particular statement in the business case? Then the charter failure. You know, charter and traditional project management is typically where the project manager and the team are appointed. And so it gives an overview of the project, project manager, potential team. It missed key core competencies needed by the team members or the project manager. So maybe we got the wrong team. Maybe we have the wrong project manager. The point is that once again, not pointing blame at this stage, but this might tell you, you know what, we've got a very inexperienced project manager in a very complex project. That's usually not a good situation unless we're doing it as a mentoring situation where they have access to someone with more experience. So we might have, as the PMO, I might have set that project manager up to fail because he or she did not have that level of expertise. So that could be a piece of it. Sponsorship failure. So I'm your project sponsor. And so the sponsor of the project spends very little time working with the team, verifying that they're reaching the goals or objectives. This is a communication kind of piece or a connection piece. So you don't have access to me. I'm not talking to you. You send me emails, I don't answer. You leave voice messages, I don't answer. Now, I would like to say that these are only the projects I have seen that I have personally worked on, but I know I'm not the only one that has had some of this. And you're thinking, okay, so what decision do I make when they don't respond? So the sponsor was hard to connect with from the team's perspective by not returning emails or calls. And we've all had some of this happen. And this is where you try to be more creative or try to go around them sometimes or go up. But sometimes, you know, no matter what you've done, there's still not a lot of connectivity here. And the scope itself, on the traditional side, the scope was already detailed or should have been. And that's connected to the charter or the statement of work. And so you're looking back at that. But if a project has little or no documentation and stakeholders are able to put in additional features, this can cause huge failure. All of you have talked about it in class if you've been with me on scope creep and how hard that is because that scope keeps creeping out. Well, that's time, money, budget, and expertise that we might or might not have in that project and probably don't have. That sets your project up for the potential of failure down the road. Scope failure happens because the scope is too loose. Each person must interpret it for themselves. And so you're not wanting that. You're wanting the scope to be very detailed. And scope failure can include any stakeholder who has higher expectations of the output of the project than what the statement of work or the charter includes. And so you find those pieces to where you're going back to your anchor. Your anchor is always going to be the scope of work because that's what's going to anchor them in the target side. If you're on the agile side, you're going back to your roadmap, which is your big overview of what you're trying to produce, and you're going to be breaking it down into to the sprint plans, which are going to be run in 2 to 4 weeks, whatever you're running, with a certain type of output going to the customer. Technology failure. Technology for the project is new to the organization, all internal team members, so we're learning as we go. I get it. We have this continuously. And your technology people are wonderful people trying to learn this, but we don't know everything. They don't know everything. So the learning curve to understand and use this technology takes longer than expected. We all have been in that situation. But the problem you get into sometimes when the crisis is then the technology is we have no subject matter expert who has the ability to be able to get us back on track. So that could be a huge, huge failure piece too. Improper team and selection failure. Team members who profess to be a subject matter expert in certain areas were placed on the team, but their expertise is more limited than expected. We'll see this sometimes. You don't normally see this if you've had the people working for your organization for a long period of time. You pretty well have evaluated what their expertise is, but this would be a new hire, for an example. And so that can have a very powerful effect because once again, you've got a new hire that you thought had expertise, but it's very more limited than what when you hired them you thought it was. Schedule failure. Schedule includes subject matter experts who are already committed to other high profile projects. Schedule plan considered only this project and did not include all the additional projects. So let me chase our rabbit, and we've talked about this many times in class with you as well. You know, when I'm scheduling a project or you're scheduling a project, we have to take into account how many other projects are on that person's plate. They're not working one project most of the time. And I know as I look at the names here, I know many of you are working 4, 5, 6, 7 projects. So if I'm scheduling a project and you're going to be a resource, you are a resource on 7 other projects. And so if there's a hiccup on any project, you're going to be over there trying to put out the fires, which is going to hurt some of the other projects. So we have to consider that. We have to put in more contingency. That sounds like I'm talking about risk, and it is a little bit, but we have to put in more time the more projects your people are working on because we've got people so loaded. And so good schedule practices include a lot of different things such as forward pass and backward pass, which you do on the traditional side. But what you're looking for is you're wanting people to be able to have times to catch up. You're looking for catch up time on any of these projects that go south. And you know that they're going to have hiccups that's going to cause them to use that time. That's not dead time. They're not sitting around goofing off. They're trying to catch each project up. And then the squeeze method. It begins with an ending date for the project and then works backward, making changes to the activity sequence until the project fits within the time frame. Everyone on this call has probably been part of something like this. It fails to consider the time of the year, other projects, and how many projects each stakeholder is presently serving on now. And that's what you're going into. If your people have a lot of projects, then you've got to extend all your project durations because of this. You've got limited resources and a lot of projects. So when scheduling a project, the team should have an 80% certainty that the schedule can be met with the resources listed. But the more projects we put on, that percentage would have to go down because I've got the people so loaded. And none of you are probably working at full staff. You're probably working with your skeleton crews right now. And so what happens is your people are working on projects, but we're not really wanting to hire a bunch of full-time people and bring them in. So we're really wanting to stick with the full-time employees that we have. And then types of project failure. Budget failure. The budget for the project was recommended by upper management 3 years ago. to its beginning. This concerns the project manager, but upper management was unwilling to make any adjustments. Well, depending on your organization, you had so much red tape to jump through to get the budget in front of somebody. I get it. But budget failure can be a huge deal, especially as you're talking about inflation, you're talking about cost of everything, everything's going up. It's huge. Risk management failure. The sponsor customer upper management did not feel risk analysis was necessary. If you've ever been on those projects, well, yeah, we don't spend a lot of time on risk. And that's probably what got us into this situation. Even if it's a low risk project, you still want to talk about risk and make some determinations on why you think it was low risk. If it is low risk, then you and your team will be able to work those risks as they come up, and you might not need a contingency plan. You might not need a mitigation strategy. But to think that we're not even going to talk about those is not the direction to go. So team members are encouraged not to look at risk or wasted time, and they look at that as a wasted time, and that's usually something that comes back to bite us. And so we at least want to have a general discussion about the risk, and if it's common risk that we work on every day, you know what? No problem. You and your team will handle that. Staffing failures. Subject matter experts and resources assigned to projects were removed during times of crisis. And for high profile customers, having team members removed at unexpected times create gaps. All of you have had some of this happen. We've all been on that project where people got moved off for higher profile, high impact project. The problem with this is that a lot of times this is where you're stacking projects on top of everybody. I was counting on that subject matter expert being on our project 50% of the time, and now they're on another project, and now I've got them like 30% of the time. So I really don't have access to that person. The other thing is that you might lose the subject matter expert. So that's one of those challenges that you're getting into as well. Planning failure. Because subject matter experts are spread thin on other projects and moved to high profile and crisis projects, it prevented them from attending team meetings. Oh my gosh, that comes up all over, doesn't it? If you're a subject matter expert, you're saying, you're shouting hallelujah and amen on this one because that is your life. You go from meeting and you arrive at the next meeting late because you're the subject matter expert trying to go to all the meetings. And so the pressure we put on these men and women who are subject matter experts is enormous. And we're almost irritated that they come to our meeting late, and all they're doing is bouncing from meeting to meeting on these things. So this is really a very powerful thing. And so there's not enough subject matter experts in many of your companies for this. Political. No, we're not talking about Democrat and Republican. We're right in the heart of it, aren't we, right now? We're talking about the politics of your company. And so internal leadership does not have buy-in. And you'll see that occasionally on some of the projects. Some of your leadership, this is their project, this is their baby. They want this. And then you've got some folks, this is way out there. They're not sure we should even be talking about that particular thing. So they politically could sabotage the project outcomes and limit personnel availability to work on the project. And so I can hurt your project just by making sure my people can't work on your project and you needed them. And so you'll see those dynamics happen in some of the organizations as well. All right, so let's go back to the root cause analysis. When conducting the root cause analysis, you're asking the 5 whys. Many of you do root cause analysis all the time. And so I just want to bring it back because this is such a great tool to be able to dig deeper and do a deep dive into what the problem is. And this is something that your project team is needing to do. This is something that you need in order to come up with the right recovery. And so, why is this happening? Once you come up with an answer, then you can create a countermeasure for that particular piece. And it might be several things. Most of the time, our projects are not failing just because of one thing. It's this that has happened, and then this happens, and then something else. And so we're looking for that countermeasure. So you're having to think differently for recovery than you do running a project. Running a project, you're looking for stability. You're looking to be able to advance and inch the project forward. You're looking to give performance reports. You're looking for status. In recovery, you're looking to stop the bleeding, and then you're trying to regain time. How can we regain that time at a faster pace? So project recovery implies there is a variation in project performance as significant enough to warrant special attention. It examines why routine project management practices are not producing desired project performance results, and it prescribes the corrective action. I want you to think about that corrective action. That's what your team is doing. We are trying to correct something that has already gone off the grid, and we're trying to pull it back on. And we're trying to get it stabilized so that you could hand it back to the project team for them to continue to go. So this is assuming that this is not the way of life in our projects. We're assuming that this is something that has just gone haywire that we're trying to fix. So there's several ranges of recovery. We've got basic recovery. Many times we work this within the team, and the team might have the experience to do this and get it back on track. It creates a preliminary guidance for project control, manages a list of indicators for troubled projects, compiles and validates general remedies used to correct project performance, specifies procedures for evaluating elevating issue projects. And so it allows you an opportunity to say, okay, these are pretty basic things. A lot of these we just do. We do them in our project, okay? When we start going to the standard size, this starts getting to be little bit bigger. And so the range of project recovery here is going to be a little more substantial. You're probably going to have management and you probably have additional team members. So you develop capability to conduct project recovery activities. You build qualified project recovery teams. So this might be a separate team than your present project team. You develop assessments based on project recovery results. So after you do the root cause, now you're coming back for assessments to see, are we getting better? Are we getting worse? Is there no change? You specify the project recovery actions. These are the actions we have to do before next Thursday. And then next Thursday, these are the actions we've got to do before the next Monday. And then what you're doing continuously is evaluating. Did that action change it? Did that action help it? And then advanced range would be it expands capability to conduct project recovery efforts. It provides project recovery training for recovery team members, introduces project recovery management and tracking tools. This is a whole philosophy around recovery. So if you have a lot of projects that are having these type of problems, you might want a recovery team to be that quick hit team to help get the projects back on track. But that's assuming that you've got the personnel for that, which you probably don't, or you might not. But it might be something that you find yourself having to do if you've got a lot of projects that are struggling there. And then the last, which I thought was excellent, is the possibility of a center of excellence. That would be the utopia that most of us don't have in the area of project recovery. So they analyze project recovery to promote goals of continuous improvement. They analyze results for project recovery processes and utilization. And then they develop project indicators and remedies to avoid the need for project recovery. The good thing about this level, and even if you don't have this level, to use pieces of this with what you're already using, is you're trying to prevent having to need project recovery in the future. That's why you're using that continuous improvement mindset. What can we do different on future projects so that we don't have to do this over and over again? And you've got people who are in the continuous improvement area, you've got people in the quality area that are doing this. And even if you don't, this should be a discussion to where we don't have to face off with all these crisis projects. I don't know how it is in every one of your situations, but I do know in class, when we start talking about this, sometimes you'll have people say, our projects are run by crisis. We run from crisis to crisis to crisis. And so if you can just hear that in their voice, you can understand the wear and tear that is on that team of going from a crisis project to another crisis project. I mean, it's just wear and tear on management as well, but wear and tear on that team as they get ready to do that. Now, step-by-step methodology for ailing projects. So identify and acknowledge the problem. In other words, this is not something we're trying to shove under the mat because we've already controlled the blame thing. We're not on a blame thing, we're on a fix it thing, okay? So the blaming, we can deal with all that stuff later. Look for red flags, monitor missed deadlines, monitor continuous things that seem to be happening with some of our projects. Assess the current state, you review the project reports versus the goals. And so, like for an example, when we talk about red flags, are we always over budget? Are we always missing our scheduling? Is our scheduling always we're scheduling our projects too short for what it really takes? That could be a culture thing, that could be a training thing, but we're trying to look at that. And then replan, adjust based on the assessment, reset the scope, reset the timelines. And here's the thing on that last bullet point. Nobody wants to do that. You might be saying, oh, management's never going to let us reset the scope and the timeline. I get it. But the point is that not resetting it doesn't change that we're going to miss it. And so resetting it with something that is more realistic and resetting it with something that's correct is really something that's going to have to be discussed. If they don't want to reset it, that's fine, but it doesn't mean that just because we left it at June 15th that we're going to hit June 15th. You're still going to possibly miss this. So you're wanting that transparency to be there, and you're wanting to be tag team between management and the team to be able to say, okay, we misestimated this. This is taking longer than what we thought, and here's what we think we need to be doing. And then optimizing resource allocation, move the resources around for efficiency. That's the reason why people will sometimes have a recovery team. They move them from one project to another for the sole purpose of that. So they almost have almost total power to do whatever they need to get the project back on track. And then it goes back to the project team to finish. Enhanced communication. Communication is having to be fast. It's having to be correct, and it's going to happen multiple times in many cases throughout the day because you're needing to pass that information on. Implement and monitor the recovery. Conduct a retrospective on what worked and what didn't work. Even in recovery efforts, you're going to find some stuff didn't work, and why did it not work? And so that community of discussion is going to be very important. And then you're documenting what you did, and what you do. That's going to continue to allow your recovery team to grow. That's going to continue to allow your current team to be able to get more skills to where some of these things they will actually pick up on before it ever happens. They'll pick up on the red flags and start communicating it before they ever get into this recovery situation where they are right now. All right. So that kind of brings us to the end of recovery. And so let me just mention a couple of things to you before I get you out of here. We have one mastermind group left, begins in September. Mastermind group is free. It lasts for 5 days. The participants who are doing this are those who are looking at kicking around the idea of doing a PMP certification. So they will be part of Mastermind. We give them a few videos that they'll listen to about qualifying for a PMP. They do a mock test of 25 PMP level questions to kind of see what that feels like. I do 2 Zoom calls with them that week to answer any kind of question. We kind of help them start structuring how they're going to fill out their application and then answer a lot of things. So this will be our last one for the year for 2024. We did 3 this year, and this will be our 3rd one. Anybody who comes to the mastermind group automatically gets a discount to come if they do decide to come to the PMP through us. And anybody in the group, we do a drawing at every mastermind group. And so one person from this group who is in the mastermind group will receive a free scholarship to come to a PMP boot camp for us. And so they will come, they don't have to come this year. They could come next year if they need to, but they will get a free scholarship. So we do a drawing every year for this, or every mastermind for this. So we've done 3 this year. So 3 people have picked, 2 have already picked up their PMP, and so this will be the 3rd on a scholarship for this. So if you have somebody who's trying to figure out how to do the application, and they've worked on projects, but the projects don't necessarily just fit perfectly, this is a great place to put them because we talk about all those things. And I'll do 2 Zoom calls that they'll have access to that we can talk about. Next thing, we've got 3 boot camps left. These are all virtual. August, October and December. And so what you're wanting to do is if you're wanting to get your PMP or you know somebody that's wanting to be in their PMP, this is a virtual. It's going to be like we are right now. Our passing rate all year long has been 97% for the first time test. And so that's unbelievable. PMI says that the average first timer at 60% will pass and 40% will fail. We're running 97% first time passing. And so it's the exact same PMP content that you would have in a private class. So if you don't have enough for a private class, that's okay. Spit them into the public. Call Wanda if you've got over 4 people. We've got a group rate for you. Even if they don't attend the same boot camps, call her. She'll work it out. And if you, as long as you're sending those 4, then you could have 1 or 2 in each of the boot camps. That one won't be a problem, and you'll get your discount for group there. But these are our last 3 boot camps here for the year, and so we'd love to have some of your people in this. So as I come to a close this morning, I hope this helps you. Recovery is such a heartache for many project managers, and all of us want to be successful. All of us want our projects to run successful, and we hate the stress, obviously, of what we're just talking about. But I just think, on my side, I just think it's better for us to talk about it and get some ideas and kind of generate some ideas and show you a resource, that for recovery to at least generate some ideas because like you're working hard, but a lot of times we don't seem like we're getting a lot of effort out of some of this to be able to put it together. So as I close, let me thank you so much for being here. And then next month we'll be meeting again. And I don't have a slide on my my topic for next month, and I can't recall it. So next month we'll be meeting again. So you'll have your another webinar for you. And I hope you have a wonderful summer with your family. And I'll see you next month, which will be August, as everybody starts going back to school right around that time. So anyway, God bless you guys. Take care of yourself this summer. Thank you so much for being part of this webinar this morning. And I'll talk with you next month. Okay. Bye, everybody. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.